So No Guns Life episode 2 has arrived, and I was actually pretty interested to see the direction that this episode would take, because episode 1, I was laughing, I was grinning, I was having a good time. I mean, the episode literally ends with a guy who has a gun for a head punching a train. It's just like, this guy doesn't even use firearms, he uses melee, despite being a talking gun. Like, the show is ridiculous in the best possible sense, and I was actually really curious to see the direction they would go with this character, Tetsuro, as well as our main character, Juzo, because it kind of felt like the idea to this season would be, basically, you'd try to rescue him, maybe he'd do it early, maybe he'd do it later into the season, then basically he'd probably be labeled a criminal and his life would be a living hell. And within 2 episodes, we basically have him rescued, but also, the town's gonna be turning against him. And I like how, serious, but also completely ridiculous it tries to make itself out to be. One of my favorite parts in this episode is the idea of cigarettes. As we've seen, he really likes his cigarettes, and we learned that he has a very particular brand that he wants to smoke. And I really like what they did, where you got this guy trying to shake down a giant talking gun, being like, hey, we know all about you. We know that your kind, they need medicine. They need something to stimulate their nerves so they don't go insane. You haven't had your favorite cigs in a while. I bet you can't even move. Like, they're building it up to be like this super villain, oh my god, it's kind of ridiculous. He needs his cigarettes, but it makes sense if it's medicine, He's basically a walking machine. It totally is reasonable to think that, he would have to turn on this kid or maybe really, fight with his willpower, things like that. It just kind of felt like this very serious scene with a kind of hint of comedic element. And then you learn he doesn't need cigarettes to function, it's just he likes the taste. It's like, that's why I like this show, is it has this super serious elements and just this fascinating world. The mechanics to these soldiers are incredibly unique. The idea of this master key that Tetsuro clearly has that he can bypass and kind of go into the driver's seat of pretty much anyone with these pieces of technology. But in theory, it shouldn't really exist. There's so many, serious and really interesting sci-fi elements at play, but then you also have a main character who just wants his favorite brand of cigarettes, and it's directed as if it's life or death, which it seems like it is life or death at first, but then realizing, oh, this character, he's actually pretty unique in the world of these characters because, his basically kill switch is somewhere inside him, so it'd be hard to hit, unlike someone like Tetsuro where you could probably just hit his neck and it would probably sever him and completely knock him out. It's just so interesting how they balance the ridiculous and just absolute serious into one weird but very fascinating No Guns Life package. I really like this show. Now, it seems to have been confirmed to be a split course, so we're going to get 12 episodes, we're going to take a season break, and then spring of next year, there'll be another 12 episodes. I think I said last week that I wasn't sure exactly how many episodes I wanted to watch of this. I could definitely see myself watching 12, and now that it's confirmed to be a split core, I do think I want to watch 24 episodes. The first episode was a lot more ridiculous, and you didn't really get a full grasp on the idea of where it wanted to go. You had a basic understanding, but it wasn't anything to say this is a super serious or there's going to be a lot to the plot. There's definitely potential, but it seems a lot more fun than trying to tell a narrative. But now seeing what they're doing, you can definitely see the originality in how the characters are being presented. There's a lot of personality, there's a lot of just amazing one-liners. It almost at times feels like a cheesy 90s action movie, as you have this man just saying the best one-liners in the face of just knocking people out, or just saying some ridiculous things with, I assume, a straight face. It's hard to tell with a guy with pretty much no emotions. It's absolutely incredible, but then when you start learning more and more about the technology, basically learning about Tetsuro and who he truly is, how he connects with these companies, and how basically the company thinks of everyone as just gears, it's there's actually a story to tell there. There's actually a narrative that would be compelling to follow. So even though we may get a lot of maybe more ridiculous things to just badass action or just funny scenes, there also is going to be a narrative to follow that's going to keep everything kind of linking together in a very elegant way. So yeah, I could definitely see myself watching 24 episodes of this with ease. I definitely think this is going to be one of the more interesting and unique series to follow, because not only on a visual level are these characters distinct, the personalities are all memorable at this point in time. We get introduced to a new character, Mary, who is just awesome, I have to say. The idea of this girl who kind of works on the mechanics and things like that to these bodies, and, if you get artificial implants from, the illegal market there, it's probably going to go completely haywire and she'll be the one to fix it. She just kind of has this personality, she definitely cares for the people that she has a connection to, but She's definitely a jokester, and that's what I really like, because this series, it understands not to take itself too seriously. It'll start setting up this serious atmosphere, but then it will clearly shut it down, but not completely ruin the potential for serious story arcs down the line. The whole situation where you have basically our main character just kind of in the lab there, and he's just hoping like, oh my god, I left the pack of my favorite cigarettes, and then she just kind of like starts grinding his gears more and more, being like, well, I don't smoke, so I probably just threw it out. And I love how much of a Full Metal Alchemist vibe our character gets, where it almost reminds me of Ed and Al from Full Metal Alchemist, because Al, he really only had like two emotions pretty much. He had his like standard robot looking face, and then he had the more embarrassed or flustered, and we get that embarrassed and flustered on him. But it's actually pretty interesting to see how much emotion can actually radiate off of this character despite him not actually like having mouth flaps and things like that. Like when he gets pissed off, you'll see the steam, and they'll put him into like a silhouette. Like they definitely know how to direct it to make the viewer understand he's pissed off, or he's getting the shakes because he doesn't have his favorite cigarette. Like there's clearly ways to direct emotion off of this character without doing the typical anime directing. And then when they shift into the more embarrassed or flustered, it's the cute anime scene you typically know. I'm just actually impressed that in a world where so many of these characters can't naturally show emotions like a typical anime drawing, I'm actually impressed with how Madhouse is actually directing it to make it feel like they still are a character, and they can get pissed off, they can get embarrassed, they can get flustered, or they can be happy. It's just nice to see a giant mechanical talking gun, despite not actually being able to talk in the traditional sense, be able to just radiate so much emotion. It's quite amazing, I have to say. I just really like this episode. I definitely think it's a slight step above episode 1, and episode 1 was a great intro. I was having a blast. You can go watch my first impressions from last week. I like this show a lot, so I was expecting to at least get more amusement out of this series, but I am glad to see it clearly going to excel with its narrative, because now that the kid's woken up, like, where do they truly want to go? Are they going to try to expose the company? They're going to try to bring it down. What type of weekly hijinks are they going to get up into? Because clearly, there's people who are going to try to make our MC's life a living hell by removing the smokes, removing just things he cares about, and clearly that could link back up to characters like Mary in the future. So there's clearly ways to make this absolutely serious and depressing, but also it can blend in that humorous and just natural aura because, we do have a talking gun character. Like, we can't just be completely serious and ridiculous, right? You gotta kind of find that balance, and I think based on episode 2, they definitely have. I didn't really have any doubts going into this episode, but I am really happy to see that any doubts that I might have had in the back of my mind that I wasn't thinking about, they definitely are pushed out the window, because this episode was fun, and I just want to have fun with this. I'm really happy to see that out of the 3 central personalities that we've been introduced to, I think they're interesting. You got, an ex-war veteran who kind of has been tossed around, and he's technically considered legal, but definitely is getting those side eyes. You got this weird doctor who is a very fun and kind of bubbly but kind of twisted persona, and then we have this kid who just wants to be free and actually has a pretty tragic backstory, but it will be interesting to see how he could potentially open up now that he's surrounded by characters such as these. Like, the trio that we currently have really just kind of like, you can piece together interesting narratives, interesting conversations, both the humorous and serious, and it's like, what's not to really trust about this series right now? The voice acting's on point, the directing's on point, and when we do get some pretty cool animation for the action, it's like, that's pretty brutal. There's something also about the opening and ending songs to this series. It's like, I kind of have an idea of what I would expect for No Guns Life for like an opening. I think it'd be like thrashy, super in your face, like Gretzko death metal, something like that. But then they give you this more like out there opening, but it somehow perfectly meshes with what we're seeing with these characters, because these characters on a visual level, you would think, oh man, this is going to be serious, it's going to be dark, you're probably going to have some pretty twisted sci-fi, and we got that, but it's also a lot more lighthearted than people would probably think at a first glance if you're just looking at maybe the poster. And I love how the music, not only in No Guns Life, but just a lot of the anime that I'm following with this new season, they have an opening that may not be what you expect at first glance, but then when you really break it down and analyze it, it's like, no, that's actually a really interesting way to set the mood for what this series is aiming for. Both the opening and ending for this show is really good, but I have to give major props specifically to the opening. It gets you in this weird mood where you're kind of confused. You're like, I really like this song, but is this really the No Guns Life opening? But it absolutely is, because when you see these characters interact, there's no better opening than what's seen there. There's just something about the music so far. I'm really excited to really see the OST flourish, both in emotional but also action-driven scenes. We're only 2 episodes in, and we've got a little taste of it here and there, but I definitely think from what we've seen and what they've teased so far, I think the music in this series is going to be exceptional. But then again, sometimes you kind of think it's going to be exceptional, and then it lets you down. But right now, I'm very optimistic because I'm liking what I'm hearing so far, and both the voice acting and the music has been tight overall. There's something about this series that just really, really grips me. It's aesthetically different, it feels retro but modern all in one, but it's just absolutely like pure, unfiltered anime trying to make you have fun without going too serious, and that's kind of like a forgotten art form. Like a lot of like older anime, they were just a little too fun without being too serious, so like they were fun but there was nothing to really write home about on a narrative level. No Guns Life to me, it kind of feels like the best of both worlds, where its main objective, make you have fun, laugh, be kind of exhilarated, but also to show you that it's not just a fun show, it actually does have a narrative to tell. And like, I don't know, it's just a forgotten art form, and I think this studio was definitely the proper one to bring to life this manga. It's ridiculous, it's badass, it's absolutely classic Madhouse in the best possible way, and I can't wait to see episode 3 next week. But what did everyone think? For manga readers, anime originals like myself, are you enjoying No Guns Life the same way I am, or is this one just not really your cup of tea? Whatever you're feeling, let me know down in the comment section below. And if you did enjoy this video, be sure to drop a like and also hit that subscribe button if you happen new. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.